There was a time when life felt heavier than usual. Days stretched endlessly, and even the act of breathing seemed like a task. The silence within became louder than the noise outside. But in the middle of that wait, something unexpected happened. A laugh, soft and almost forgotten. It didn't solve anything instantly, but it broke the stillness like a crack of sunlight through an old wooden window. That laugh didn't come from joy. It wasn't even funny. It was just needed. Like the soul remembered a part of itself that had been sleeping. And suddenly, the weight didn't vanish, but it shifted. The shoulders stood a little taller, the heart beat a little stronger. There was life there, in that laugh. Life that had been dormant, waiting to be awakened. Can you recall a moment when laughter surprised you in the middle of your pain? That moment might have been more sacred than you realized. The heart has its own memory. Sometimes it forgets what lightness feels like. But when it hears laughter, especially its own, something ancient stirs inside. It's not about jokes, it's not about comedy. It's about reclaiming a part of yourself that has been buried under years of worry, loss, or silence. Thank you for staying with me so far. Your time here matters, and I promise, what comes next will reach even deeper. There's a mysterious link between pain and laughter. On the surface, they seem like opposites. But dig a little deeper, and you'll find that sometimes the most heartfelt laugh follows a season of tears. It's as if the soul, having endured so much, finally decides to exhale. That laugh is a bridge, not just between sorrow and joy, but between the human and the divine. Throughout history, people have used laughter not to escape pain, but to endure it. It's the whisper that says, "I'm still here." It's the echo of resilience. It's the resistance of the spirit refusing to be crushed. Science tells us that laughter heals. But long before studies, the wise already knew. Laughter doesn't just heal the body, it heals the memory. It rewires how we see the past. It tells our nervous system, you survived. There's breath inside every laugh, and that breath carries new life. It shakes off the dust of despair. It tells the lungs, expand. There's still room for hope here. Some say it's just air, but what if it's prayer? What if a deep belly laugh is as sacred as kneeling? Sometimes, when you laugh with your whole being, the heavens lean in. Not because you're amusing, but because your joy aligns with a higher purpose. A sincere laugh may be the closest we ever get to singing in perfect harmony with something greater than ourselves. Laughter is more than reaction. It's response. It's an answer to suffering, to questions we can't articulate. It is the soul's way of saying, I still believe, even when everything hurts, even when no one is watching. In moments of deep grief, even a half smile can become a form of prayer. It's not denying the pain. It's speaking softly to it, saying, you don't own me. And then something shifts. You begin to notice the little things again. The smell of morning coffee, the sound of leaves brushing the ground, the shape of clouds that don't look like anything but still feel familiar. This is how laughter returns, not as noise, but as awareness. Time behaves differently around joy. It slows down, not because the clock changes, but because our awareness does. We begin to live each second instead of racing to the next. Laughter stretches time, not by making life longer in days, but fuller in meaning. Elders often say that laughter added years to their lives, not because it cured them, but because it carried them. Through disappointments, through aching joints, through loneliness, a laugh over breakfast, a joke in a hospital room. These are not distractions, they're anchors. Wounds that laugh heal in strange ways, not by forgetting what caused them, but by disarming the sting. When we find the courage to laugh at the things that once broke us, we begin to rise from the ashes of our own pain. That laugh becomes armor, not to hide, but to walk forward unafraid. Joy, it turns out, can be discipline. Not just a feeling that visits us when everything is right, but a decision, a trained eye that looks for goodness in the middle of chaos, a mouth that smiles before it fully believes, a heart that chooses to rise when it could fall. There's strength in the one who smiles despite having every reason not to. There's something sacred in their defiance. They don't laugh because life is easy. They laugh because their spirit is alive, and that spirit refuses to be silent. Courage is not always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet chuckle of someone who should be weeping. That laugh, though small, can echo through eternity. It says, "I'm not giving up today." Even scripture speaks of joy, not as luxury, but as commandment. A cheerful heart is good medicine, not optional, not occasional, necessary. God Himself delights in joy. If we are made in His image, then maybe our laughter is part of that reflection. There's a moment between the pain and the punchline, a breath, a pause, a sacred silence. That moment might be the space where healing chooses to enter. We often overlook it rushing past, but the soul remembers, and in remembering, it laughs. In dark times, laughter becomes an act of protest, a refusal to let fear or despair win. When everything around us says, "Give in," that single smile whispers, "Not yet." Stories have the power to heal, but the stories we tell with a grin, even when our voice shakes, have a unique power. They bind up the brokenness not only in ourselves, but in others. We share them not to entertain, but to connect, to say, "Me too," to say, "Still standing." Some chains are not made of iron or steel. They are forged in memories, regrets, and things left unsaid. But laughter has a way of slipping past those locks. It enters softly, almost unnoticed, and begins to loosen what has long been tight. There are moments when the soul makes a choice, to harden or to remain tender. The one who keeps laughing has chosen tenderness. They've chosen to feel even when it hurts. That kind of heart becomes a shelter, not just for themselves, but for those around them. Hope doesn't always arrive with a trumpet. Sometimes it sneaks in quietly, wearing a smile. That smile doesn't deny reality, it transforms it. A small grin in the mirror can mark the beginning of something new, a silent declaration that the story isn't over. The body listens to what the soul believes. Fear weakens it, anger drains it. But joy energizes, it fuels recovery, it inspires motion. And laughter is one of the purest signals that something good still lives inside, even in sickness. Researchers can measure endorphins, serotonin, immune response, but they can't fully explain why someone who laughs more often lives longer. Maybe it's because joy doesn't just fight illness, it builds life from within, one moment of light at a time. In times of grief, even a moment of levity feels like betrayal, but it's not. It's grace. It's a gift sent not to erase the loss, but to sustain the heart. Laughter in mourning is not forgetting, it's remembering with warmth. Cycles of pain often repeat until something interrupts them. Laughter can be that interruption. It shakes the pattern, redirects the energy, rewrites the script. Suddenly the story takes a turn we didn't expect, but deeply needed. Wisdom isn't always serious. In fact, some of the wisest people laugh the easiest, not because life spared them hardship, but because they saw through it. They recognize that joy isn't naive, it's mature. It's a decision rooted in clarity. To laugh again after heartbreak is not weakness, it's resurrection. It's the moment the heart opens again, not because the world became safer, but because it chose love over fear. When faith begins to smile, miracles aren't far. Not the kind that part seas or move mountains, but the kind that softens bitterness, that restores connection, that reminds the soul it was never alone. Sometimes the first step toward healing is a laugh shared between enemies, not because the past is erased, but because the wall begins to crack. Humor softens hearts that logic can't reach. It opens a path where apology can walk through. Youth is not just a number, it's a condition of the soul. Some people grow older without ever aging because their spirit never forgets how to play, how to smile, how to find delight in what others overlook. Their secret? They kept laughing. The joy we model becomes a legacy. Children remember how we reacted more than what we said. When they see resilience wrapped in laughter, they learn a way of living that textbooks can't teach. We pass down strength through smiles. To age while smiling is a quiet rebellion. It's a refusal to bow to the narrative that growing old means growing bitter. Instead, we show that peace, kindness, and even humor can deepen with time, not fade. Heaven isn't always a distant place. Sometimes it starts here, in small moments of joy. A warm breeze, a shared joke, a sigh of relief after tears. These are whispers of eternity, reminding us that not all that matters is beyond the clouds. There are people who laugh before the breakthrough. That's not foolishness, that's vision. They smile while standing in the fire, not because they enjoy the heat, but because they know the flames will pass and they won't burn alone. True strength is smiling when no one else does. It's telling your soul, I still believe, even if your eyes haven't seen the answer. That kind of inner fire doesn't need applause, it only needs faith. The deepest peace often sounds like quiet laughter, not loud, not explosive, just soft, calm, like a river moving gently over stones. It comes from knowing you're no longer fighting against the current of life, but floating with it. Some smiles carry redemption. They happen during long-awaited conversations. They rise after forgiveness. They bring back what years of silence stole. That kind of joy rewrites the end of a story. Even pain can be soil. Laughter can plant seeds there. And with time, those seeds grow into something beautiful, something resilient. A garden that speaks of survival, faith, and the power of a spirit that never stopped blooming. Sometimes, the miracle isn't a complete transformation. It's just one light day, one morning without tears, one evening with a gentle laugh. That small shift can be enough to remind the heart that life still holds room for joy. Gratitude often arrives quietly, not as a celebration, but as a steady smile in the dark, when nothing has changed outwardly, but the soul says, thank you anyway. That kind of joy isn't dependent. It's rooted. It doesn't need reasons. It becomes one. The most profound forms of happiness don't need an audience. They're quiet. They exist in the stillness of the soul that no longer seeks approval. That kind of peace can't be faked. And it doesn't fade when the spotlight turns off. There comes a point when we can look back and smile, not because everything went right, but because we made it through. That smile becomes a seal on the past, a way of saying, that chapter didn't define me, it refined me. Some souls live longer not because their bodies resist time, but because their spirit continues to dance. They don't count years, they count moments, and those moments, filled with laughter, stretch across lifetimes. Laughter becomes a quiet inheritance, not money, not possessions, but a way of being, a way of facing hardship with grace. A lightness passed down through generations like a family prayer. To grow old while smiling is to carry a torch, a living testimony that joy can endure, that no matter what the world takes from you, it cannot take your ability to respond with light. Eternity often hides in the present. In the joy that is felt so deeply, it almost stops time. These are glimpses of something sacred when your soul whispers, "This is what I was made for." There are laughs that arrive before the miracle, as if the heart already knows what the eyes have yet to see. That laugh is faith embodied, a preview of the healing, a promise felt in the bones. Maturity is often silent, but sometimes it chuckles. It doesn't pretend all is well, but it knows all will be well. That's the kind of joy that steadies others, that tells the world there's still beauty here if we choose to see it. Peace doesn't always shout. Sometimes it speaks through a gentle smile at the end of a long day, not because everything went right, but because your heart stayed open. That kind of peace isn't passive, it's powerful. It's the result of choosing grace again and again. There are reunions that begin with tears and end with laughter, not because the pain vanished, but because love returned. In those moments, laughter doesn't erase the past. It redeems it. It rebuilds what time alone could not. Joy planted in pain often grows strongest. It pushes through like a wildflower in cracked concrete, fragile to the eye, but fierce underneath. The soul that laughs again after sorrow becomes a garden where healing can take root. Not every day needs to be extraordinary. Sometimes one light day is a miracle, a soft sunrise, a shared joke, a warm silence. These are not small things. They are sacred. They are the building blocks of a life well lived. There is something holy in a heart that gives thanks in the dark, that smiles when it hasn't received the answer yet. That kind of soul walks in a deeper light, the kind that doesn't depend on sunshine to shine. The deepest kind of happiness doesn't shout. It just is. It stands steady. It breathes easy. It isn't moved by the storm because it has roots. And those roots were watered by every moment you chose to laugh when you could have cried. In the final seasons of life, people don't remember every detail. They remember how they felt. They remember the laughter, the kindness, the peace. That's the true legacy. Not what we built, but what we made others feel. Some people smile until the very end, not because they feared nothing, but because they trusted everything. Their laughter becomes a final gift, one last reminder that life is still worth smiling about. Even in the fading light, a light soul lives long, not always in years, but in fullness, in depth, in richness, in memories that outlive the body. Those who choose joy stretch time not by resisting death, but by embracing life. When it's all said and done, the truest legacy is not found in what we leave behind, but in the way we carried our hearts. And if your heart learned to laugh, even once, then you have already lived well.